Oh, everyone knows everyone. And these kids become creators. So, well, 3 days was 3 days into it. So, home was transit, home was raised. You were first, who's a science teacher? I didn't see that. Yeah, no, this is from Emory. She got picked my first sock on the set. Looks like, that's great, that's great. Everything
Check.
seems to be so great.
Check.
I know, I don't have to worry about my drink getting cold. Should have brought a hot whatever.
Well, I always think because I'm always hot and then I get dressed and I'm like, well, maybe I'll put. And I'm like, no, 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 it's gonna be cold. It's gonna be cold.
I know, before I got in here.
3 times between now and, early October.
Yeah.
Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. I find the more spur of the moment thing within a
Right.
day, you can free yourself rather than plan these things.
Yeah, it's,
But it is beautiful up there. Now that we've got the bedroom kind of not heated, but yet it's all clean and painted.
Yeah.
If you want to see
If the
those
fact,
lights.
yeah, well, I can see you over that sometimes too.
our wood stove really heats the whole place up.
It's not
We
inexpensive
don't,
or anything
Oh,
like
yeah,
that.
because it's right behind
yeah,
Brian,
wood.
yes.
So we've got this fieldstone fireplace.
Yeah.
Goes back to 1928, 1930.
And then they've been
But it takes
modifying
fire.
it by putting all these
Yeah,
names
so
of people.
I wouldn't want to feed that all night long if it got real cold. We've been up there some nights where in the morning you wake up and it's 44.
Yeah, I've been there.
Nippy.
I've woken up and it's 32.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you? Well, I shouldn't say that because in that kettle pond and then in late September,
September 8th, 2016 meeting of the Monomoy Regional School Committee. The first item on the agenda is the approval of minutes of August 25th, 2016. In light of the fact that there was a concern about whether we had a quorum, and we probably didn't have a quorum, I'm not sure what to do about those minutes. But in addition, at our last meeting, we approved minutes of July 14th. We're going to reconsider those minutes at our next meeting. Okay? Hold off on the decision on the August 25th while we figure out what we're supposed to do about that. So, moving to the next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anybody who's here to address the school committee? Not seeing anyone. Move to recognitions. Mr. Carpenter.
Just, I have not a list of recognitions, but just want to share that we had our opening day this past Tuesday for students, and so there were a lot of work went in over the summer, and I had shared at our opening meeting with the faculty the prior week, just sort of thanking them for prepare for the school year. So it was nice to see the buildings ready for the students coming in, and just to really acknowledge the tremendous work our teachers have done this summer, preparing, particularly the teachers who have new courses that they've developed, and also our teachers in grades kindergarten through grade 7 that have really spent time diving into this new math curriculum, the Math and Focus curriculum. So it's exciting to sort of see the new year move forward and to see students in classes.
Thank you. Next up, reports and discussions. The first is the Harwich Elementary Handbook. Mr. Hine.
Good evening, Sam Hine, principal of Harwich Elementary School, with my sidekick, better half, counterpart, left arm, right arm, Mary Aldag, our assistant principal. We appreciate being delayed in presenting this handbook. We had a lot of work over the summer, and as Superintendent voiced, a number of our teachers worked not only in June, and Mary will share a little bit more about that, but over the summer to get us ready to be where we are this year, to kick off a pretty neat initiative building-wide, and we'll give you some more details in a few seconds on that. So the handbook that you have, and if there's any questions with regards to formatting and changes like that, we've converted to the Google world, and I guess I'm an old, what's that expression? It's hard to teach an old dog new tricks. Well, in converting to different formats, etc., I may not have actually done it right. And so there's still a little bit of cleaning up to do, and I'll take responsibility for that. But I've got a great left-hand person and a great right-hand person in the office that between the three of us, they'll teach me how to do this right. So we'll clean this up. I've got an abbreviated version for you. You've got the highlighted aspects, and it'll be on the website, and for you, once approved, it'll go live. Page 2, the administrative names. Page 5, the calendar dates that are reflecting open houses, curriculum nights, so on and so forth. Page 6, a big blurb on security cameras. We have security cameras in front of our buildings and realized this summer that there was no mention about them. So consistent with the middle school and the high school and the elementary school in Chatham, you'll see the language, again, is parallel in that respect. So that was added. On page 7, there's a little highlighted section about parent pickup patrol. It was a pilot last year. It ran very well. I was able to, and I'm pleased to negotiate for my colleagues that we were able to continue a pilot cost-free opportunity this year if the middle school and elementary schools were to jump on board. But because it's up and running and we are planning and will budget to continue it, we decided that it was important that parents understand the nuances of the pickup patrol. And so there's a little blurb about that. Page 14, you will see a highlighted section on the student support team. It's definitions of how we determine children that are struggling or doing really well, and we're looking for ways to enrich them. The process is evolving over the last couple of years, and we just want to clean up the language a little bit as the process has evolved over time. And then the highlight of the evening is I get to turn over page 17, the Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports Initiative at Harwich Elementary School and within our district.
Thank you, Sam. The social emotional learning model that we're kicking off this year at Harwich Elementary falls under positive behavior intervention and supports, which is research-based and goes along with a common sense of children react better to positive reinforcement for the right behavior than negative reprimands for poor behavior. And we have started meeting last June, and we came together with Chatham Elementary and also actually Truro Central School. We were able to work out a cost share between the two districts. And Harwich has a team of 10 professionals, myself, 2 of our guidance department members, and the rest are classroom teachers and specialists. And we met together in June and came up with a mission statement for our school and how we wanted to motivate students to be. And from that mission statement, we developed the motto that's in here, that Harwich Elementary students are fantastic, responsible, respectful, safe, and ready to learn. And so, oh, very good. So that's one of the visuals that we've developed, this poster and the additional posters that go throughout the school that we'll show you in a minute. So from that motto, everything ties together and falls together from that. And that is really the core belief that's kind of all over our school right now since the first day of school. And we were able to work over the summer, that team of 10, those who wanted to, on developing the full PBIS program to be ready for kickoff with the teachers last week and for the students this first week. And can't thank the community enough and the district enough for allowing that curriculum work to happen, because we would not have been able to make that happen without that. So thank you very much for that support. So we have developed lesson plans where the children are taught very explicitly in all different settings, as you can see on the charts on page 17 and 18, throughout the school, what it looks like to be respectful in the hallway. What does it look like to be responsible in the bathroom? What does it look to be, how are you safe on the bus, and how are you ready to learn? And the appropriate voice level, we have a voice level chart. This is 0, 1, 2, and 3. And so the voice levels are identified as well. But what we're using to tie this all together and is really exciting the children is the school-wide reinforcement system. We really loved what Chatham was doing, our sister school, with sharks and fish bowls and all, and kind of took that idea, and we now have water drops and air bubbles and fish bowls that the children are earning throughout the day. And once they fill up their fish bowl a certain number of times in their classroom, they'll be able to put their shark into the shark tank, which is one of our showcases in the lobby. And once all the grade level sharks are in the shark tank, 6 big stuffed sharks, our 4th grade student council is going to determine what our school-wide celebration will be, and that we're hoping will be around the beginning of October. So the children were very excited about it. First day, I felt, and the teachers reported that there was a real palpable difference. Certainly at dismissal time, there really was. It was very calm and peaceful. It was great. And we really had an exceptional first day, and the feedback was that this was a large part of it, that the children seemed very calm and very happy.
And I can interject at this point a little plug for a new HES Happenings flyer that will be coming out, and hopefully tomorrow emailed to all parents. But you'll see pictures of staff taking the kindergartners from the activity room to their classrooms and reminding them about the Zero Boys. You'll see students that are modeling, helping their younger peers walk in the hallways the way, pointing it to the signs. It's really neat. Hopefully over the next couple of weeks and throughout the year, you're going to continue seeing that, examples of that, and the excitement that's generating in the school.
So our team of 10 will continue meeting throughout the school year on a monthly basis, and it really is a 3 to 5 year implementation. So what we've been able to do so far is very exciting, as we've addressed many of the contexts in the school, but there's a lot of enthusiasm, and it's been very grassroots. It has come from within the staff, which is really powerful for implementation.
And then after that, if we go to the next page on page 19, there's 2 sections that are highlighted, and it's the bullying and hazing description. And again, in the evolution of morphing our programs and our language to be consistent across the district, there were some semantics that were a little bit different, so you will see that language actually mirrors the language that we have, that was vetted through and approved by you, the committee in the Chatham document last 2 or 3 weeks ago, I think it was. And that's about it. And that's it. The rest of it, the symposium, the end of it, are the federal guidelines that were vetted through council a number of years ago. And I do want to point out, if you haven't noticed it, that the layout's a little bit different. And when reading through the handbooks, you'll see some little nuances that are kind of carried over from Chatham and Harwich days. And it could be just a matter of wordsmithing, semantics, But Robin, myself, Mary will be collaborating over the course of the year, and the school council will be weighing in on it to make sure that the expectations are consistent. The layout even looks more consistent. But we wanted to point out the difference in our building, especially in the fact that the code of conduct, and you might question why the PBIs fell under the rules of conduct. That section used to be very negative in tone. You will not do this. No throwing stones on the playground. And the tone in the system-wide approach is really more in a positive fashion. And so that's why we inserted that, and we want to highlight that for parents to see this year.
Any questions? Stella?
I wanted to say, I had a couple questions. Who are the two guidance people at the elementary school?
Who they are?
Yeah.
Nancy Barnett and Allison Burton.
Okay, so Allison Burton is the adjustment counselor? Is that new this year?
No, she was here last year.
Okay. And I like that all these things are written positive, and I really like that they're done by classroom rather than individuals getting recognition. I think that's nice. I did wonder on one of these, what does it look like to appreciate cafeteria staff? That's one of the things. So what do the kids need to do in order for them to get a point for that or whatever they do?
I believe what the teachers who wrote the lesson plan for cafeteria staff fell under being respectful, saying please, thank you, and just acknowledging that they're there. So often, some employees in the building that do so much to support the students kind of fall into the background.
I know, having worked at Chatham Elementary, that one of the women in the cafeterias always really worked on the kids using please and thank you, and it goes such a long way. I mean, this was just on her own. So if it's that kind of thing, I think that's fabulous. Whatever it is, but that's really nice.
And recognizing the team teachers that worked over the summer to develop their initial lesson plans, we recognize that you could hit all the areas on the first day of school. So focusing on the entry of the building, on the bus, on the recess, and then teasing out and revisiting these areas and seeing if there's some more language that needs to be done, a different lesson, a different explicit method of delivering that, or recognizing. But it was very exciting to have the kindergarten orientation play day and do the bus tours, and to be able to roll this out with our kindergarten families. But what's it look like to be respectful? What's it look like to be ready to learn on the bus? And when they came off the bus on the first day, to meet them, and it looks like, boys and girls, you look like you're ready to learn. You've got your backpacks in your hands, you've checked your seats, you're ready to go to class carefully. Off you go. We got on the PA system. If the students were acknowledged for having shown that they were ready to learn coming off the buses, please put a little bubble into the fish jar. And so some of the levels started rising right away. And the kids were like, okay, that was great. That immediate feedback is really important.
Mr. Russell?
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Mary. Just to jump to the opening day experience of the superintendent, I happened to take a tour of the 4 buildings as a member of the school committee. I was very impressed. I know, Sam, you were a little nervous that your building was so occupied during the summer that the final touches weren't present, but from my view, I thought all 4 schools were dressed up and ready to go, and I was very, very impressed. We kind of live here at the high school, so we see the kind of the custom-made first-class experience, but clearly the crew that we have in all 4 buildings with the facility manager, they got at it, and I was most impressed. Question about the new discipline code. You mentioned it carry over into the bus conduct. Have the bus drivers been given a mini in-service on what to look for with the kids' behaviors?
When the students came to school the first day, Sam and I boarded each and every bus and talked about the expectations, but we're going to put that together with our first bus evacuation, and that's part of the rollout, is to then bring the bus drivers in with the fantastic stickers and all of that. And we also have an opportunity to meet with them when they come in for their staff pictures as well, for their ID tags.
bus company has been very open to us commenting or becoming part of their agenda on their monthly safety meetings as an opportunity for training. So we're just like we do the mark training, or this something new that's happening, or there's been a concern, we want to address it globally. It's been a great opportunity. They do that pretty much every month.
Thank you, Sam and Mary, for the work on this. I think it's great. I love that you have the, I don't know if these are.
Yeah.
Can you hear?
No, I don't think they're on.
They're not on.
Can you tap that?
Not on. You can't.
The in-room mics aren't on.
So I wanted to especially say I appreciate that you put the mission statement right in the beginning. That, as well as the PBIS, that whole outline there, are really positive, and it's very much appreciated. Maybe you could add the vision statement and the theory of action also. I think that would make it even more positive. Because read through the rest of it, there's a lot of disciplinary things and so forth and so on, and it's kind of really negative. I know that that is probably required, but it just might make it a little nicer. That's all. Just a suggestion. What else? I was curious about the voice level in the classroom being 0 to 3, but the voice level on the playground is only 0 to 2.
There was a lot of discussion around that. 3 is really what the teachers termed as a presentation voice. And so, you know, it's 0 to 3 in the classroom. You can see, you know, quiet to 0 is quiet, is silent. 1 is quietly talking, almost kind of a whisper. 2 is just generalized talking, and 3 is yelling. I mean, certainly children should be able to yell on the playground. They should be able to have a level 3, so thank you for pointing that out. We'll do things as we move along.
I just happened to notice that.
Yeah.
These are on, thank you. You can hear, right, Steve? The only thing that I saw in here, well, actually there are 2 things. In the discipline section, or rules of conduct, it says student may be denied recess. It also says that in the bus section. In our policy, students may not be denied recess.
That's the openness that I remember having the conversation with the teachers, is that we're probably not going to hit every section accurately on the first day of school. That as we go through, we're going to be meeting regularly, and we're going to be identifying areas that are not consistent and correcting that. So the term and the removal of recess being consistently applied in the school as opposed to on policy, it's an issue that we've got to work through. Our students sometimes conference during recess and ask to take a few minutes to go through their steps and reflect on their action. Yeah, is that considered and deemed losing recess? By some, yes, it will be.
That if the student requests to do something during recess, that is a request. That's not a denial of recess. But this clearly says the student may be denied recess, and that's in direct contradiction to our policy. So I just wanted to point that out. I can look that up later on.
The way that I've interpreted that when, thinking about our wellness policy is we don't schedule students to miss recess because of some major problem behavior that we've defined the definitions for. When a student comes into the office, we deal with that real time. There is occasionally a situation where a student, just because of when they came in and what's happening, they are in over recess, but that's has been few and far in between over the last school year. So we don't schedule them to miss recess as part of the discipline process, but it sometimes just happens that way because of the time of the day.
Again, that's not really a denial of recess. That is that you're addressing an issue and it happens to be during the recess time. That's something different.
The word deny has more about reprimand.
Oh, it's, yeah, it's consequences or disciplinary actions. that's a disciplinary action to deny recess.
And that's noted, and it's one of those things where I anticipate, as you turn pages over and over, and you go through one look, then the second look, the third look, and you bring the committee together and say, okay, are we consistent here? No, we're not. Some of this was done in the absence of the teachers, and I want the staff to own it as much as possible. So the revisions that we were adding to this handbook, the committee recognized that they own that. And this is where we're going, absolutely, we're going to put it in our handbook. There's some things in the handbook that are direct contradiction, all the negative language, so we're going to take that out. But there's a couple of areas that'll pop up like that, and that's not a problem to eliminate that. It's just a matter of part of the fine tuning of the document. The spirit is that it's meant to be presented in a positive manner.
Oh, yeah, you've done a great job on that.
And when things like that pop up, we will take care of it.
Thank you. Just one more thing. On the first paragraph of the bullying, I realized that you said that you took that from somewhere else. I found that really confusing to read. Wherever else that came from, we should perhaps reword it. Did anybody else find that?
Related to that, when this will come before us in 2 weeks or something, again, after you fix that and whatever else you need to do, but I happened to be reading over these things, and I read the bully prevention thing, and the problem isn't each school. The problem is that I was on the policy committee when all these policies were done, and the policy for bullying was written in a certain way then, but somehow it got transcribed a different way when it got typed up. So it's not in our policy manual, it's not written in a clear way at all. For instance, verbal bullying isn't included at all, and that, of course, is one. And so that's followed all the policy manual, all the school things have been consistent. It's just consistently wrong because personally I never noticed it before. So this has probably gone on for more than a year.
When the law came out, and we looked at our handbooks that year, see if we were supporting it or inconsistent, I can remember flushing this language out through our council and making sure that it was, if I'm not mistaken, this was the exact verbatim. Because I can be honest with you, we had tweaked some of the language to read it a little bit better. Instead of harm to the victim that causes emotional, we put it that caused emotional. It was more of a sentence. And honestly, to be consistent with the other schools, I realized we had wordsmithed that. And to get back to what the spirit hadn't changed, but the specific language had. So we basically put back the language that we had agreed as a district. But honestly, I can't remember what year that was. It was the year that the state came out with the regulations. It's like, we just got to basically put it right in.
Well, there's one suggested by MASC that we adopted. And so we can just go back to MASC and see what theirs is and put that in, and then it won't be any problem.
Just so that I'm clear, you're saying that when the school committee adopted the language for bullying,
Right.
it was mistyped?
It was mistyped. It
And
was
now
not,
our language has been reproduced in
yes,
all the manuals?
yes,
Yeah.
Okay,
yes.
so that falls on us to fix it.
It
then,
does, it does. It's
Mr. Russell?
just
Just to follow up clarification, I might be remiss. The issue regarding misbehavior in recess, this is a school committee policy in the last year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5?
Karen's right. The wellness policy for the school district talks about that you don't use recess or you don't use food as a disciplinary tool. So kids, if kids sort of antsy and bouncing out of their seat, you don't say, okay, I'm going to deny you recess when recess would probably help the child be in a better place and more calm to learn. So so the school committee again adopted a wellness policy consistent with the Massachusetts Association of School Committees exemplars, and, you know, that are based on, you know, research on what makes for a good policy for wellness, and, you know, that's where it comes from.
Leads me to ask a follow-up question. So if a student in a classroom is supposed to be doing something and they're not doing it, and the teacher says, I'd like you to stay in from recess until you finish this, is that a violation of our policy?
I think that,
Is it, another part of my question is, does denial mean denial of all of recess, or most of recess, or?
and I think sometimes it gets into some interesting semantics, and I know the teachers, you know, we've had these conversations, and I know particularly in the elementary school where you have the recess, you can imagine that, you know, that is it a denial of recess, or is the teacher saying, you know, Jimmy's struggling, you know, why don't you stay with me for a few minutes after class so that we can go over what you didn't understand? Is that a provision of support, or is it a denial of recess? And it's, you know, so I think what they have tried to do as for both of our elementary schools is look at the positive. It's not saying to Jimmy that I'm taking away your recess, that, you know, that I want to spend extra time with you to help you learn this. In the case of a student who doesn't understand something.
Does Jimmy have a choice in the matter? That's the next obvious question, right?
The option would be, would you like to stay after school, or would you like to use the recess time to work this problem out? And that's been offered. And I'll be honest with you, 99%, if not 100% of the time, children say, let's work it out right now. And the parents appreciate that, because then they can get on the bus and go home. Otherwise, I'm saying, I'm going to call mom and dad, somebody needs to come pick you up after school, because we can deal with this after school.
I would still say that's a choice rather than a denial, and I do have the wording here. Do you want me to read it?
Sure.
Physical activity and punishment. Teachers and other school and community personnel should not use physical activity, for example, running laps, push-ups, or withhold opportunities for physical activity, for example, recess, physical education, as punishment. That's our policy.
So it's not that clear.
I would,
it's clear.
my 2 cents in age, I just find it so unclear that past experience, and excluding food, I'm not talking about that at all. But if a youngster got in a confrontation with a fellow student, pushing, shoving, fighting, there aren't too many things from 8 o'clock to 2 that an elementary school can do to calm the boy or the girl down. And I just find it, at first blush, I don't recall approving this, and I probably didn't read it. But I would think that choice or denial, and at some point a youngster might be just as equally, if better served saying, you're not going to go out to recess to enjoy the running around, and we'll take the gamble that maybe you and I can talk to get what happened. But that's clearly my opinion. But I'm surprised that
Is that a motion to amend the school policy?
At another time, probably would be fair.
Right.
I would say if you deny someone recess, that's punishment. That seems pretty clear. It seems pretty much in line with this policy, which you can look up. It's ADF.
I don't intend to pursue this evening. I left my opinion on how one might be able to address a youngster exclusive of recess, to have a youngster not attend that fun moment for 20 minutes when in fact they did something that was so rude. But that's just my singular opinion.
Ms. Scott.
I think Mr. Hine and Ms. Oldrich had pretty much said that they're going to be reviewing this with their committee. We obviously need to review our policies. So I think we've kind of analyzed this enough. It's not really necessary to go on there. You guys can look at it with your group and bring it back when we come back in 2 weeks, and then we can talk again. But I think maybe a policy subcommittee meeting might be a better place for this discussion. That's all.
Agreed.
Without food.
Any further questions on any additional topics?
Yes.
Yes, I think.
I really like the idea of beginning to define the rules of conduct here and on a child's level and adult level like me, but maybe. Anyway, but the bigger picture I have as a new person on this board, I'm trying to understand, like Chatham calls it the discipline code. This is the rules of conduct. I understand we're doing the same thing. But another piece in this, I guess my biggest question is, how similar are the schools, like Chatham and Harwich? Because as I look at the homework policy, it's not, to me, as defined. In each school, it's defined more in, as I was looking at Chatham than it was. And so I guess the question is, how alike are the schools to be? Or are they to be alike? I don't know. That's my question.
Good question.
It is a good
It
question.
occurred, you know, it's funny, because it occurred to me as well to wonder whether this mirrors the Chatham, when it was being presented, and I thought, you know, a lot of parents have told us over the years that they consider the Chatham Elementary School to be different from the Harwich Elementary School in terms of the class size and
I've heard that too.
the way parents expect the things to be. So I could see if there was some legitimate reason for the policies for the handbooks to be different, if it reflects somewhat of a different atmosphere. But that in and of itself, I would say, is a policy thing that we need to discuss. I mean, because the alternative argument is they should be exactly the same, right?
So then people would have a right to draw their conclusions, right, based on the handbooks or whatever else. If they're different, then they can say that schools may be different.
Yeah, which
Okay.
to some extent has been a goal of families historically, that they be
Is
different.
the goal to merge them or no? I just want to know where we're going. I mean, is
I
that?
agree. That's a good question. Mr. Russell?
No, the example 3 or 4 years ago when we were planning the new high school, and there was a period of time there, I think 2 years, that the high school varsity programs, although physically separate, the kids were joining the same team. And the two principals at the time were asked to review their athletic policies regarding behaviors. And in that instance, they had to be identical, so that the Chatham youngsters joining the soccer team would have the same standard of expectations as the Howard kids. At some point, I think the same applies to elementary schools, that curriculum, for example, math focus, behavior standards should be basically the same. As far as teaching styles and hirings and how people approach youngsters, that's that freedom to have what goes on in classrooms. But I would think it's probably appropriate to say that the framework of 2 elementary schools, the 2 or 3 key things in the school would be basically the same, primarily the behavior standards.
Ms. Stowe?
I will agree with Terry. I think that Chatham was making the point more about cultural things or traditions, and clearly there is a different class size there. But as far as the academics that they leave with, which would, to me, include homework, and the behavioral expectations and things like that, I want them, when they enter grade 5 at a common middle school, to be approaching it all caught up, all the same. So that makes sense to me.
Ms. Ryder?
I just wanted to say thank you for this and for putting as much of a positive spin on it as you could. It shows. Thank you for that. In spite of the small things that I said, hopefully they're small things, but yeah, thank you.
Mr. Duvall?
I know that we've had the presentations over the last few years, and every year they have worked to make them more alike and more in sync. And the first statement that was made, that it's still an ongoing project, and he's working with Robin to make sure that they get it so that it's, the same. So I can understand with a handbook that big that it takes a while to get everything synced up. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the lease for the iMac Computer Lab
Just-
TV studio.
I think Ms. Gussie just wanted to chime in.
My name is Cindy Gushie, and I'm Vice President for the Monomoy Regional Education Association. And I just want to touch on the topic of the wellness policy for a second. Mr. Carpenter and the executive board have been discussing the wellness policy, and we're putting together a proposal. But I just wanted to ask the question that's been asked of me by teachers is, how does the school committee feel about having a child sit for 5 minutes on a bench to finish the work that he didn't accomplish because he was acting out and not doing what he was asked to do in class? And not only did not he finish his assignment, but he also made it difficult because of the behavior. And especially in 3rd and 4th grade, that they at one time were using that time for the child to finish homework that they may have not finished the night before, and they feel that we're now taking away accountability from students, that they now knowing that they're not going to be being made to finish their work to accomplish what they were doing either during the morning of that school day or finish their homework from the night before, would be one issue. The other issue has to do with the fact that if you're going to go back and look at the wellness policy, that 2 areas that need to be looked at is when they talk about childhood obesity, they're just talking about Howard's children. Nowhere in the policy does it talk about Chatham at all. But on the very first page, I believe it's in the 3rd paragraph, it talks about the fact that children in Howard's being obese or having a higher rate of obesity. And the other issue would be the having a health teacher at the elementary school, or the elementary school teachers being required to teach health, because that is in the wellness policy as it is. And if you're going to be looking over that, those are just areas that we would recommend. And I know that the policy is being looked at with, come up with a list of suggestions, because I'm the person who's the information is being given to, and that I'm going to be sending it to the Friday morning. I believe you still meet on Friday mornings to go over policy. That's what I was told, to be able to look at that. But since we brought that up and we're talking about accountability and looking at the handbook, that these areas go hand in hand. So just as a concern from the teachers, that this is one of the areas that we're looking at, and thank you.
I would, Estelle.
Cindy, just so you know that when there's a wellness committee meeting, I need to be notified, because it's required for a representative for the school committee, and I'm that person.
Okay, we just have talked, I'm just basing the fact that from an email that we received from Mr. Carpenter and some other conversations have taken place, I have been collecting information, so I'm going to write up the concerns and submit it to Scott, and he's going to give it to whomever. Because we don't have a wellness committee of teachers. We don't have our own wellness committee. The only wellness policy committee that I am aware of is the school committee one. I'm not aware, I may be mistaken, but I'm not aware of another wellness committee made up of educators.
There is.
Am I mistaken in that fact?
There's one that the district should have to review how we deal with wellness from a district-wide standpoint.
Oh, I'm not aware of that, I'm sorry.
I want to add that at opening day, I made a point of saying to the teachers in the opening day speech that we want to actively seek input from the teachers. And who's in a better position to have an educated opinion on a recess policy than the other people who are affected by it, in addition to the students. So I would, speaking for myself, I would be very interested in getting input from you and the people you're talking to. I think I sense that there's been some concern in this committee tonight about whether the wellness policy needs to be modified or changed or just made clearer. But I would very much appreciate the input from teachers.
And I'll be honest that it's a couple weeks from being finished. Part of the reason is they got packed and I'm not sure exactly which box is in. But I just wanted you to be, those are the main concerns, and those are, and if I can remember what page the OBC is talking about, Howard, you can tell that that is a
My understanding
concern.
is that was an error that's been fixed.
Okay, well, when the last time I printed it out at the end of June, it had not been, so I'm just, we had talked about that.
The
fact
copy.
that maybe it had.
The copy, yeah, the copy I have says Harwich too. She's right, it's the third paragraph. I think that was an oversight.
Okay, but I'm just saying that especially at Howard Elementary School, because we were really looking at the fact of, it caused a great big change in what we were doing, because I'll speak for the third grade team, because I used to work on that team, is that they had a teacher who stayed in from recess. And part of the reason is, there's sometimes children didn't want to go outside, maybe something was happening that they didn't know about. But when we took away that study hall piece, that kind of took away that, I'll call it a safe haven for some of those kids who really needed to be able to be inside in a small group. And maybe we didn't know what was happening, but because of the fact that it took away that time and that accountability, and kids now not being asked to finish work that they needed to finish, that, or being asked to sit on the bench for 5 minutes because of something that they were doing that wasn't safe with other children, it just kind of changes the whole dynamic of how do we handle recess. And I think that that really is an issue from a teacher's point of view that really needs to be looked at and to be clarified.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other comments on that? We'll move along. Then again, Lisa, for the iMac Computer Lab.
So, in your packets is a quote to lease 14 iMac 27-inch computers. This is to provide computers for the TV, video, film program here at the high school, so that we have a consistent format of computers for the class to use. These would be computers that would go into the room right off of the library. Jim has done some research as to how we could go about getting these computers and leasing them as opposed to purchasing them. I think purchasing, I look at it, is desirable if you have a way that after 3 or 4 years, when the computers become, let's say, obsolete for video production, because you need sort of faster computers to do the video production end of computer technology, and as those get obsolete, that you would then pass these computers down elsewhere in the district. But outside of video, the district doesn't use Macintosh computers. So, a strategy that refreshes the technology in the video lab every 3 years, which is what this lease approach would do, is one that makes, I think, more sense for the district rather than purchasing and moving the computers elsewhere within the district. So I don't know if Jim wants to kind of chime in on it.
Yeah, just, there was a couple of questions that have come up before regarding the actual units, the iMac units. I'll address that real quick, but.
Sure.
The original quote was saying an i5 processor, and there was some questions about whether that was, for the next 3 years, if that's going to carry over well and not come up. So initially on the quote, we were trying to keep the price as low as possible because we were considering purchasing the whole thing in a lump sum. And so we were looking for ways to kind of squeeze the price down to make it more reasonable for us. So that's why we chose the i5. Steve Cass was fine with that. He thought it would get us through. But obviously, the preference would be for an i7 processor, which would be much, not a lot faster, but it would definitely be faster and would last kind of longer. But a 3-year period is a really long time in terms of something like that. So we could get by with either one. I think we're looking at about
I priced the 27-inch iMac with the i7 processor here, and it comes out about $3,000. So, you know, over a 3-year period times 14, I mean, I think we're looking at another $3,500 total, something like that, if we wanted to bump it up to the faster processor. It's kind of a call on your part, you know, do we want to spend the extra few $1,000s for the faster processor? Or, you know, we could get by with the i5, but the i7 would be preferable. So, any comments? Yeah.
Ms. Ryder?
The i5 processor's been around at least 4 years, 5, 6. The i7 has a lot of gains of the i5. This is at least 4 years old. This has an i5. I would suggest going with the i7 if we can afford it, especially for video production. You need it.
Yeah, okay. That's the kind of feedback I was looking for. So it's, I would suggest going with the i7. And the only reason, like I said, we didn't do that initially was just the cost factor. But if we're spreading the cost out over a 3-year period, and with the lease, it's kind of remarkable with the Macintosh or with the Apple equipment, the value holds so well. At the end of the lease, they actually take it back and resell it, and then give us the money that they get from reselling, I believe, and allow us to roll that back into the next lease. So it ends up being quite a discount, and I think it would pay for the difference between the processors.
I think we've all, even as regular computer users, and phone users have experienced a situation where you get what you think is the latest and greatest, and then a year or two later, some new program comes out that you're dying to have. It doesn't quite work with the computer that you have, so in the sense of the i5s being good enough to get by, I'd rather be ahead of the curve, you know, in anticipation of the changes that we don't even know that are coming down the line. So I would support the better, or the faster, more powerful.
And we can just,
Katie,
Katie Isernio, business manager, and we'll certainly get the quote from the contact that Jim has. And what I just wanted to just point out that this is a new approach for us, leasing the computers. So we just have to keep in mind that this has to be a budgetary item that we add to our budget, you know, out every year, because at the end of 3 years, if we don't have it budgeted, we don't want to be without a TV studio. So I like the idea of it, especially on something that's so fastly changing, and that's with the kids being right up to speed on what they'll be able to use when they leave school and what they'll be working in the real world. But we just have to remember that it becomes a part of our budget, you know, always.
Burstfield, this was if I remember correctly, this lease provides that at the end of the 3 years, we still own the computers, right?
No. This particular, they have several different types of leases. One is where you can, say, pay $1 and keep it. And then this one, we decided was a better, another way to do it was they buy it back at the end. The company that leases it buys it back. And that actually works to our benefit because they'll buy it back, and the money that they pay to buy it back, we roll that into our next lease.
The $2.
Yeah, it turns out to be a better way to do it for us because we want to keep refreshing. If we were going to hold the equipment at the end of 3 years and say we were trying to stretch it for 5 years, then it would make sense to buy it for $1 and then hold on to the equipment. But we want to keep refreshing every 3 years. And if you want to do that, they have a slightly different lease option where they buy it back. So it really works out nicely for that kind of a 3-year cycle. And we always have the latest, greatest equipment, you know, every 3 years, which is really, as everybody's been saying, it's really important in the TV studio.
Well, that does drive home Ms. Isernio's point,
Yeah.
that at the end of the 3 years, if we're having budget issues, we won't have the option of buying them for $1 to get through the next budget year. So we will be making a long-term, we will be somewhat committing future school committee members to what we decide tonight. Mr. Russell.
A question to either Jim or Katie. If we approve the movement here, what would be the turnaround time before Mr. Cass would have his implemented lab?
Yeah, I think that, you know, as soon as the financing is, you know, kind of rubber stamped and approved through the leasing company, when we submit the proposal or the quote to Apple, and then their turnaround time is usually about a week. Ships out within a week, and then we get it within a week. So you know, just to be on the safe side, 2 to 3 weeks.
What's the we have the lab now with other computers, so what would be the downtime switching over?
None really. I mean, he's sort of getting by without having, we used to have the lab set up in this other room behind you, and we sort of took that apart in anticipation of the Mac lab coming in. And Steve he's got another bank of about 8 to 10 iMacs that he's fine with just, you know, getting by with until the new lab gets put together. So he's willing to wait.
Any other questions, Mr. Duval?
So if we're gonna go with the latest and greatest and faster, do you have to requote all these? Yes. So we can't act on it tonight, we need to wait till you get the requote
Right.
that has the dollars and cents.
I could generate a new quote while you're taking care of business. Maybe before you leave tonight, I could have one ready for you.
But, I mean, we can't just go on the assumption that it's $3,500 or $3,800.
Right, exactly. Yeah,
We
if you
need
want a
to
specific
have the
quote.
real dollar value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I can try and put one together, you know, while you're doing other stuff after I'm finished, and I can do it right online, and it takes maybe 10, 15 minutes. Okay.
Yep.
We'll appreciate that.
Thanks, Jim.
Anything else? We'll be hearing more on that. Next up, lease for the scale computing device, hyperconvergence.
But wait, there's more.
But wait,
So, when we held the last meeting, Jim did a presentation that updated a lot of the things that have been going on with technology in the school district. One of those being that the school district is now fully connected to CapeNet, which gives us this fiber connection between all of our buildings. We also, as a school district, spend a significant amount of money each year with technical companies like HubTech and Wally Computing to come in and make sense of the server rooms in each of the schools. And what Jim has was discussing with us, and we brought this proposal again to the finance subcommittee this past week, is this concept of essentially replacing all of the servers and server rooms in 4 different buildings with an appliance that's essentially a single solid-state server that would operate everything in the district, so that using the fiber connections, we would access the same piece of equipment and not have these wire messes in each of these 4 server closets in 4 different schools. So it becomes something that is much easier to maintain and sort of streamlines how the district's warehousing its data, and sort of sets the stage for ease of off-site backups, storage as well. So the proposal here is to purchase a appliance, a solid-state appliance that would allow for this hyper-convergence as Jim described.
This particular lease is a lease to own, so at the end of the 3 years, for $1, we would purchase it because it's a different type of equipment that has a longer shelf life. So there are 2 different lease ideas in front of you tonight.
Questions?
Any comments or questions about the plan? It was presented to us at the last meeting, and it was also presented to the finance subcommittee in more detail. And my impression was that the finance subcommittee was leaning towards favoring this, but I don't want to speak for any of the people who were there. Did you have some comments, Ms. Ryder?
Yeah, I had some questions. I think it's definitely time to go to a single server. I have a question about backup. I have a question about who would maintain it, and what are you running on the server, and the people that are maintaining it, what is their background in order to be able to take care of problems that arise. I think you had proposed to maintain it in-house, and I had suggested that that is perhaps not the best plan unless you have people with a certain skill, a certain background, especially on the particular kind of server that you're going to run, whether it's Windows, Linux, or, God forbid, Unix, let's hope not. It's important because they are different. I run a Windows server at my part-time job, and I also have server space that's on a Linux server at my mostly full-time job, and they're very different. So I have concerns about the maintenance part of it more than anything.
There's a lot of questions bundled up in one. But no, I hear it. Everything you said made perfect sense, and I totally get your thinking is right on target. We use exclusively Windows servers for our own stuff in district. We do have some servers that are maintained by other companies, like maybe the HVAC system or the telephony system, and they kind of do their own thing, and we don't really get too involved in any of the maintenance or upkeep on those. They may run them on a physical box that they've put in the high school here, but we just sort of give them access, to that, and they run that. So they may be running some other type of operating system, but we just use the basic Windows servers at this point. And we've spent the last 3 or 4 months, and Martha Rosen actually has stepped up and shown her skills as somebody who's really actually very good at managing VMs or virtual machines. And she's done a lot of her own training to get up to speed with it. And she's managed to take about 60 different servers that we had throughout the district, all virtual servers, and consolidated them down to about 25. So that was a huge cleanup job. We had servers running all over the district that nobody knew what they were doing. And some of them were just kind of running, and we'd look at each other and go, hey, what does that do? And I don't know, do you know? No, do you know? And so it was one of those where we realized that and not only just, they may be virtual servers, but at the same time they were running on these physical servers that are, these big boxes with fans, and they suck up quite a bit of electricity. So, all over the place, in every school we had these server rooms that were running physical boxes that really weren't needed. And so we just decided, well, let's just shut these down if they're not really necessary. So we've taken all of the unnecessary servers, shut them down, and then we've moved all of the ones that we really need over to the high school here. And so now we're running pretty much, I'd say we have about 25 that we can run just out of the high school. And that would be very easy to maintain on appliance like the Scale appliance. The Scale appliance just has its own VMware solution, and it's actually, I call it KVM. And one of the huge benefits of that is that it doesn't have the complicated and incredibly expensive VMware licensing. And also we had the Veeam backup licensing. And so where we were kind of getting killed was with all this complex licensing that's developed over the years. And it was the way things were done for a long time. And any kind of enterprise operation, they had these complex scenarios of these storage area networks, the virtual machines, the backups, and then the physical servers. And so it became this kind of monstrous, complex web of machines and networks, and it required expertise to maintain them, keep them up, and that's where all the money was going, was hiring these consultants to come in, because the basic technicians that we have in the district are great, but some of the work was just too complicated. So we're trying to simplify it so that we can do the majority of the work ourselves, maintain it, run it, and then only when really necessary call in the cavalry, call in a network engineer that has to do something. Like, for instance, we switched over to the CapeNet broadband service just recently, and it went great, but there were issues with what's called the firewall. So everything now is running through this firewall at the high school, but there's certain adjustments that have to be made to that firewall, and that takes a certain level of knowledge and expertise. And so we had to call in a network engineer to help us open the ports on the firewall. I know this is all Terry's place, but it's it's, that's where we have to call somebody in and help us to make sure we get it set up right. But with this system, I believe that we have the knowledge and the expertise just within our group in the district to essentially run this system without a lot of extra help. And it comes with 24/7 support as well. So if we get stuck on something, they can remote in and help us fix it, or they can fix it. So it's I don't know if I answered some of your questions.
Some, probably it was too much rolled up into one, I'm sorry. So you're moving the 25 servers into one?
I wouldn't say into, the 25 servers are virtual servers, so we call them VMs or virtual machines. And those, so you could have like 10 or 15 on one physical box. So like the physical server just looks like a great big computer, like the old desktop computers. They're just bigger. And you can house a whole number, 15, maybe 20 virtual machines on one physical server. So if we had 3 of the nodes, like we're proposing with the scale setup, that would easily handle the 25.
So you're going to put the 25 on 3 nodes with scale. So you're consolidating all those 25 onto this.
Onto that system, yeah. But there's with 3 nodes, each node has a failover system. So if a server or VM fails on one, it immediately replicates onto another. So they have a kind of instant replication system. So that way, if one of the servers fails, it instantly reproduces itself. It's kind of freaky the way it happens, but it's really a nice system that way, that it keeps us safe.
So you also have a failover, fallover offsite system, correct?
Yeah, now this is, what's really interesting is we can leverage the Open Cape co-location center, and we can put a single node down in the co-location center, and that becomes our offsite backup, and then we can schedule just the regular backups here at the high school, and they'll instantly head over to the co-location center in, I think it's Barnstable, England. I didn't want to give away where it was.
It's near
Security reasons. No,
I've been there.
I'm sorry.
I've seen it. The co-location center that Open Cape has, why not just lease from them and save yourself the hassle?
Exactly. You're thinking exactly the way we were thinking initially when we were looking at all this. It actually is much more expensive to have somebody else run a system like, they wouldn't use the scale system, they would use the traditional servers and VMware and all the licensing and maintenance that goes with it. And it ends up being about, I think probably about 4 times as much. When I just did a preliminary search of that, it was turning out to be very expensive. And you're having to pay people to do all the maintenance and upgrades. So it's kind of like doing the same thing we've been doing, except just doing it somewhere else and paying somebody there. My opinion was just that this was a better solution for us, being the size of the district that we are. We're not a huge operation, and this gives us a kind of, nimbleness in our infrastructure. I personally thought it was the best choice, but it's certainly up for debate.
2 more questions. You've said that there have been a lot of problems with firewall adjustments, and you've also said that Martha Rosen has had several months of experience. With those 2 factors taken into account, you believe that this will be sufficient to support the servers being here?
Oh, I think she's been doing this for a number of years, and she's pretty well versed in it. And the virtual machines they're really not that complicated. And with the scale system, you can create a virtual machine in just a couple of minutes. So it's a very simplified version of what used to be a very complex setup. So that's kind of the beauty of the whole thing, is that it takes what used to be really difficult and that you'd have to hire these expensive engineers to do, and we can just do it in-house. So it's not a bad deal.
One last question.
Sure.
Who is doing the migration and when?
Good question. That's part of the quote that we've got, and they will send one of their installation people out here for a day, and he'll actually do the installation and the migration for us. And I've talked to him several times about the whole process, and he says that it's really fairly quick. He's basically just migrating the virtual machines over to the Scale appliance, and it's all included in the price, and the migration costs are factored in there as well.
So he's doing all the migration, and you're doing a backup beforehand?
Yeah, we've been backing up everything. We've got backups and backups at this point. And that was the one thing that I just said, okay, we can clean up the servers, but before you do anything, back it up, you know, and then back it up again. So we've got, you know, external hard drives with backups on it. We have virtual backups, so we have like at least two separate backups for anything right now.
When is he coming? The Scale representative?
It's.
For the migration?
Well, it would depend on, you know, the appointment.
Right, but I mean, are you going to schedule it at a time when there'll be, you know, I don't know, say the first week of school vacation, so there's plenty of time to get it up and running and check everything?
Yeah. The reason I'm laughing is we just went through this, you know, like we had these two major projects over the summer with the Open Cape and the wireless project, and, you know, we approved everything back in April, we got all, and it still somehow always ends up, you know, they're still working on it like the day before school. But it all gets done. But yes, we'll do everything we can to schedule it, you know, either on like a weekend for a long weekend or vacation period where we can test and make sure everything's working before everybody comes back.
Just a suggestion, better to do it over a longer period of time than a long weekend, just because they always say, oh, it's a piece of cake, and then it's not always a piece of cake. I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely, you're dead on with that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, no, you understand that stuff, I'm sure. And it's a very real thing. So we'll look and see if we can do it. You know, we could do it October, November, maybe around Thanksgiving period, something, wherever we feel like we have a stretch of time where we can really make it happen and have time to test it. But, yeah, great questions, thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Anybody understand anything?
It's my area, I love it.
I know. I thought the hyper-convergence was last weekend's tropical storm.
Well, can I just highlight one example? On Monday, I spent 3 hours in the server room at the middle school. And one of the battery backup systems had failed, and the main server at the middle school ended up shutting down, and that affected Budget Sense, our financial system, and affected two of these things called domain controllers, which does all the wireless and makes it so all the computers can talk on the network, and it suddenly was just shut off. And I went in there, and sure enough, the system had shut down, and I had to get on the phone with the network engineer, who I'm sure we had to pay overtime because it was Labor Day, and I'm there with my phone with a little video thing going, and I'm talking to him, we're trying to get it. And ultimately what happened was we ended up having to plug the server back into an extension cord that's coming out of the wall up near the air conditioning unit, and it's being powered by this kind of cheap power strip from Job Lot. and I'm looking at this thing going, this is our like main server at the middle school, and the Budget Sense server sitting there on this table with a piece of masking tape holding a flash drive in it. And I'm thinking, this is crazy. I mean, we're asking for trouble. So, you know, I'm not blaming or pointing fingers. It's just where we're at, and that's, to me, it was a disaster waiting to happen. So I'm just kind of, whatever choice we decide to make, I really, you know, hope we make it soon. Because, you know, we've got the winter coming on. I just don't want, you know, a storm to knock out that system, and then all of a sudden, you know, we're not running anymore. Anyway, that's my kind of weird thing.
Well, thank you for your hard work and your ability to answer all these questions that some of us understood.
Yeah, happy to talk about it anytime. Thanks.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda and reports and discussions are school committee goals for the 2016-2017 school year. I had mentioned, and Mr. Carpenter.
Terry was wondering, do we need to vote
Well, it's not on the agenda,
It's not, yeah.
so I guess we'll vote on it at the next meeting. I'm sure that Mr. Birchfield, while he was speaking, was also getting us a quote on the other one.
Because he's that good.
Multitasking, Vulcan method. The school committee goals for 2016-17, I had asked everybody by email if they would come in tonight with ideas for school committee goals, partly because it's a good thing to do, and partly because when we meet with the MASC woman at our next meeting, the topic will be goals. Mr. Russell has put together a list of goals based upon, partly based on a couple of ideas I had and a couple of ideas that he has, and he's passing those out now. Is there anybody else who has anything prepared? Things I've missed out.
I was going to write 3 like you asked, but then I was getting sick, so I got 1 done. And just a little heading.
If we had one from all of us, it would still be 4 too many, so that's great.
So do you want me to pass that around?
Sure. Would you want to summarize that for us while we're receiving it?
Support the development, and it has to do with our strategic plan. Support the development and implementation of social emotional curriculum, which is in our strategic plan. Lessons at all levels, keeping with the guidelines on implementing social emotional learning, SEL, curricula developed by the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. And so, because I wanted to do this in an appropriate way, I called MASC, so they helped me write that. And this second and third page is just a little bit of supplement of what, since I'm referring to something. There's a law that is Chapter 9E2, Acts of 2010. It's was around the bully prevention, but then it goes into the SEL. It says, as defined by law, SEL is the process through which students and adults acquire the knowledge, attitudes, and skills associated with core areas of social and emotional competency. More specifically, and then it goes into recognizing and managing their emotions, demonstrating caring and concern for others, establishing positive relationship, making responsible decisions, constructively handling challenging social situations. And so there are particular curriculums that do this. At the elementary school in Harwich, I've seen in the library, Second Step, which, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different ones. But basically, this is one thing that's kind of required anyway, by law and by our strategic plan. So
Anybody have any questions of Sharon's idea at this point? Obviously, we'll be talking about this as we go forward.
Well, at our last workshop, Dorothy Prester mentioned this, and I didn't even know there was a curriculum for this, and that's where this came from.
Thank you. Before we get to Mr. Russell, is there anybody else who brought anything in particular? Ms. Scott.
I brought in my head on a sheet of paper not to pass out to everyone. One of them is a duplicate on Mr. Russell, so I won't mention that. The other one is actually very pertinent to the conversation we had earlier, which was to begin reviewing our district's policy manual and maybe make that a 2-year goal, split it in half, something along that lines, to start looking for the little things in there that need to be updated. So that was one of them. And the other one is just to kind of help us with a very strict guideline as a goal to complete the superintendent evaluation on time. So I said by July 2017, including a mid-year evaluation as well this year, which we have never done. So those were my 2 additions.
We got closer last year, a
We got
lot
closer,
closer.
but I figured if we have it as a actual written on paper goal, it might actually have a more likelihood of getting done properly, for Mr. Carpenter's sake.
Any other thoughts or comments on that proposal? Estelle?
I think we're all in agreement, and it doesn't need to be a written down goal, because I think that's going to happen with the chair we've got.
Ms. Ryder?
I actually had thought about the policy manual one. I had it worded a little differently, but I agree that we should do that.
Thank you. Anybody else? Did you have?
I didn't write anything
Okay.
down. I was still thinking about it, but one of the ones that you mentioned in your email, I agreed with. And I will think some more about it.
Okay. Mr. Russell, you took the time. Thank you for putting this together in writing. If you want to summarize?
Sure. These are real straightforward and simple, I think, and they're not a finished work. I tried to keep within 3 to 5 goals, and so in not any great order, the first alluded to a conversation we had 3 or 4 weeks ago at our workshop, and it targets the K-7 new math and focused curriculum. And this is rough wordage, but basically the school committee will monitor and support the introduction, implementation, and ongoing process of staff training and student progress of this math curriculum initiative. And I threw some action steps. One would be regular staff and student updates every 3 months. That's a suggestion during school committee meetings. The school committee will participate in a year-ending math-focused assessment presented by the staff. And the timeline above steps will be built into regular school committee meetings for the next 2 or 3 years. The second item, I think we also talked about this. I think Brian alluded to it as chair, Monomoy Regional Agreement Review. The school committee, and these goals kind of are direct action stuff. It's not we'd be relying on anybody else. The school committee will review and make any appropriate revisions or additions to the document and arrange with the superintendent and chairman for the joint meeting of the school committee and the Chatham and Howard boards of selectmen to present any recommended changes and or revisions. And the timeline I put there is the review would be completed and follow-up meeting would be somewhere at the end of January 2017. The third one actually may be premature, but then again we can look at it as a 2-year goal after just reviewing our high school principal's letter alluding to the accreditation that was in our packet this evening. It alludes to the launching preparation is this year, but 2/18 in October would be when the visiting team would come and begin their process. So keep that in mind as I just read this, that I thought it would be appropriate to have the Monomoy Regional High School New England Schools and Colleges accreditation process. The school committee will support and monitor, and where appropriate, participate in the letters are wrong, high school curriculum process. Action step, the school committee will invite high school administrators and teachers and team leaders of this effort to our public meetings to present summaries and update on the ongoing accreditation process. Timeline would be off because I did not have this letter, so it would be between 2/16 and 2/18. And the last one that was noted, also has been mentioned, I thought it'd be something, why not do something we already know we're somewhat committed to, and that's this 4th one. The district governance program, which is sponsored by the Mass Association of School Committees. The school committee will participate in the Mass Association School Committees sponsored governance support project training workshops. We've already attended and worked on 2. I think there are 2 more targeted. The action steps would be commit to establish training workshop dates for the final 2. Simple enough. B, create a Monomoy Regional School Committee District Protocol Guidelines. And then C, create a Monomoy Regional School Committee Handbook. And the timeline I put down is somewhere around the end of July. So those are my suggestions. I too felt that ones that were mentioned I think were appropriate also, if we could somehow keep them to 5.
Any comments or questions about what Mr. Russell said? Scott?
I was just going to add, I had the district governance as well, and add on there something that you mentioned and something that I have spent a lot of time thinking about as well, is this school committee self-evaluation. Kind of that falls underneath this governance program, I believe. So I'd like to add that as an action step as well.
That's also a program set up by MASC.
Correct.
They have guidelines for that. I think it's a self-evaluation, not directly with them, but I think they present
how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Ryder?
Yeah, that's the one that you wrote to us about the school committee self-evaluation that I liked. And thank you, Terry, for putting dates on 1, 2, and 4 that we had already discussed, because that makes it a little more formal.
Ms. Stout?
Things that are ongoing, I don't prefer to have in here, but the things like, number 1 is a new thing, the math curriculum. That makes a lot of sense. Number 2, the meetings with the Monomoy, I don't think that needs to be a goal. I think we just would do it anyway. The accreditation process I've been involved with several times. I don't think there's a real part for us with that. We could ask them to come here and present at the end like we often do about high school courses they're having or anything new. And governance is something new that we are doing.
If I remember correctly, we had talked at one of the workshops about the advantage of having specific goals with specific action steps so that
Yes.
we can determine whether we've ever met the goals, and be more, more specific than general. The review of the regional agreement is, of course, required by the regional agreement. So whether it's a goal or not, it's something we have to do. But if we, we're still going to be doing that. It's still going to take time.
Right.
So if we take that off the goals in order to put on 2 other goals, now we have 3 things that we have to do and then 6 things that we want to do, and we're back to having too many goals and not enough time. So even though there are things on here that, we're halfway through, such as the district governance program and things that are mandatory, it's still something that's going to require a great deal of time. And I would hate to set ourselves up again for a list of goals that's unwieldy in terms of our time and resources. That's just my thoughts on that. Ms. Ryder?
We're going to discuss our final goals further in our workshop, correct?
Absolutely, yep. This is just a preliminary go-around just to see
Right.
where people are at. Any other comments? Good, thank you. Thank you for putting that together, all of you. Next item is subcommittee report. It was mentioned that the finance subcommittee met last week, and discussed in particular the issue having to do with the computer leasing and the hyper-convergence.
You just like to say that word.
Pardon?
You just like to say
I
that
do
word.
like that word. Any other subcommittee reports?
What about the other aspect of it? What about the other?
Yeah, there was also a discussion in the finance subcommittee on the issue of reviewing our relationships with the attorneys and the law firms that the school committee employs, both generally and for special ed. We had some discussion on that. I think Mr. Carpenter has some comments on that in his superintendent's report. Any other subcommittee that met or is planning to meet that needs to? There's not to put you on the spot, but there's a policy group that's been meeting or is talking about meeting.
Trying to meet.
Trying to
It's
meet.
not really policy. I don't know where it falls, under a subcommittee or not a subcommittee, but to try to develop the norms and protocols.
Oh, we
For the
considered that, I
school
think,
committee.
sorry. I think we considered that an ad hoc subcommittee. Yeah, we've been trying to get together.
So, working on it.
Thanks. Anything else on the subcommittee reports? Hearing none. Superintendent's report, Mr. Carpenter.
Just to, to just quickly loop back on the legal counsel, the school district has 2 law firms that we generally have worked with ever since I've been here. We, for most collective bargaining and contractual law, work with Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and LaHaye. For our special ed counsel, we generally work with Long and DePietro. So I was just reaching out to Kevin Bresnahan, who is the lawyer we have with Murphy, Hesse, Toomey, and LaHaye, are generally used just to touch base with them and just make sure that, that they're ready and have the bandwidth to launch relatively soon into custodian negotiations. And I think that we in the near term are going to need somebody from or somebody or bodies from the school committee to join us in that. But Kevin was saying that he's ready and willing to dive into that, and he'll be joining us shortly after he gets married.
Is there anything left?
So that's all I have for just a quick update on the law firms. I want to just provide one little kudo to Sam and his team. I saw somewhere some email that came in over the last day, a Harwich Happenings that I liked. So nice job on the newsletter there.
Hopefully tomorrow, all the emails that you all have shared will allow me to send that HS Happenings flyer to you. And my hope is every Friday, in line, very similar to the Friday focus that Bill had last year, we'll update the community on what's happening in our summer.
It looked nice, Sam.
Can we, do all the schools do that? That's a great thing.
I believe that you'll see ones coming at different times from each of the schools.
Those are really nice.
Ms. Ryder.
I had a question. As far as the website and who's going to be the provider, I see that you have a presentation from the last meeting saying that you're vetting vendors. What is the progress on that? And the independent design firm, are they going to provide a framework if you are in fact pursuing an independent design firm?
I'll ask Jim if he's still back there.
Is that part of a planned presentation for tonight?
Well, I think when Jim gets back in, he can chime in on where they are with the website. Just another quick acknowledgement. We are having the same little fine tuning when it comes to buses at the beginning of the school year this year as in past year. I know that the first day of school we had an email blast went out from Chatham Elementary that a couple of the buses were running late. There was some of the middle school runs got behind, and that sort of dominoed down to the elementary schools. The nice thing is by day 2 things were a little closer to on track, and I think we're getting a little closer. We will be working with Cape Destinations to fine tune the routes so that we get the students so that they're having the shortest bus rides that they possibly can, but also that we have the buses getting to the schools in time. There have been a couple buses that have not been there at the quote unquote opening bell, and again, that's just trying to fine tune the routes. Then to loop back to what Terry had mentioned in your packet, there's a letter from the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and NEASC, about our reaccreditation visit, just letting us know that the visiting committee will be coming here Sunday, October 14th, 2018, so a year and a month from now. Put it, so in 2018, so, sorry.
That's a lot of notice.
Yes, but it's also a big process that the school has to go to in preparation for that. So we can put it way out on our calendars, but what the school will be doing prior to this is going through really over a year-long process of a self-study, and it's what the school and community go through. One of the things that we need to do as a school district and the administration school committee, if I was chiming in on one of Terry's proposed goals, where where a school committee is supporting this process. In my former district, we would allocate a NEASC stipend and define what the role was for a leader or leaders amongst the faculty that help the administration guide the school through this process. In both of our previous school districts, both in Harwich and in Chatham, when they would have gone through the NEASC process, you would have had members of your faculty that were leading this NEASC process. So what I am coming to you to ask is for me to be able to work with our union to develop what the expectations are for that role, and to come up with an appropriate stipend that I would then be bringing back to you to describe this process. But you can imagine that you have a number of committees that are meeting as part of this self-study. Report is then generated, a rather lengthy report is written and generated, and it's us reflecting. So this visiting committee that's going to be coming here will be reading our self-reflection, the self-study, and then we'll be coming in and spending the better part of a week diving in great depth with teams focused on each of the parts of this self-study. So then they will be generating a report back to us in this process that says, well, here's what we commend you on, or here's what we would recommend within each of these areas. The school district then would have a follow-up report that they're reporting back on every section of this NEASC report that's presented. So again, that's when these leaders that that you would develop and support would be working with the administration to develop the follow-up report or reports. So I think a thing that we need to do as a district in the short term is work with the MREA to develop a NEASC leadership role that currently hasn't existed in Monomoy. We haven't gone through a NEASC process as a now joint district, and develop what that job description or that stipend description is, and the expectations for it, and what the pay would be for that.
Is that something you were hoping we would deal with and vote on this evening?
We don't need to deal with it and vote on this evening, but I'd say by the next time we meet, I'd like to see as an action item, at least authorizing me to start that process. I'll be working with the principal, trying to flesh out what we think that job should look like. And I have to remind you all that it's a thing that needs to be negotiated. It's not just the administration comes up with a job description or a school committee comes up with a job description. This is it. This is something that gets negotiated with our staff.
So this is something I'm unfamiliar with, because having worked in Chatham, it was a small school, and so at the high school, the principal just did it as part of his job. But here we've got a much bigger school than that. So you're envisioning like a teacher being ahead of that or something?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and ask Paul Mangelikes, but I actually doubt that Paul alone was involved.
It was a team of people. I was on the school committee the last time we had the accreditation.
Right, I wasn't there at the end, it was before that, so I'm not sure what he developed it.
Yeah.
So, but did the team get stipends for all that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm just unfamiliar with that. So you're not talking about one position, and you're talking about more positions?
Well, I guess it could be one, or it could be a position and a position that's shared. At least in my own experience, I had a lead person at Lincoln Sunbury that did this, and you know, so I had one, but it could have easily been split and shared by, you know, by 2 or 3. I think it's a choice that one makes. One of the big roles is writing, and sometimes writing by one is a little more streamlined than writing by committee. But I think that's what Bill and his team would need to kind of look at, what makes sense and who's interested.
Thank you.
Thus ends your superintendent's report.
Thus ends.
Okay, action items. Oh, and by the way, NEASC, that's the people that put us on double secret probation and caused us to now be in this building today, right?
Who knows? Well, I think, you know, it's a process. It's a process that has some good that can come out of it. You know, they will say, hey, there's a weakness in, the culture of a building or in the physical facility, and suggest, hey, these are areas that you need to work on. In the case of Harwich Public Schools at the time, there was a facility that needed attention and did catalyze what we have today. So it's an arduous process, but sometimes some good comes out of it.
Well, I hope they don't tell us to build another school. Mr. Russell.
Just to echo that, Mr. Chair, that I think that after we were able to get this building up and running in a first-class way, what better way than for the teachers to get together for a whole year and just review the situation as, who would say that? It'll come to me, I'll call it. And get in their own minds, as well as the subcommittees with maybe the two co-chairs, how, what they feel regarding culture and curriculum, athletics, parent connections, and have those two major components, this being done as a way to get ourselves launched well before the 4th year of this building. So I see that it comes at a very opportune time.
Great.
Just little points of information that within even action steps in the strategic plan, when we talk about the NEASC process, there's a survey that's a part of that process, this Endicott survey. And one of the things that we had also discussed and put in the action steps is to have that, to use that process, not just at the high school, but to really look at this NEASC process as a way that we're looking at our district, not just the high school. So it's, the high school's the one that, that gets the silver plating at the end of this, and, but to really have this be a way to look at everything that we're doing, not just the high school.
Anybody else? Action items. Monomoy Regional Middle School Handbook. Obviously, we've had a present. Mr. Duvall.
I move that we approve the Monomoy Regional School Handbook as presented at our last meeting, pursuant to any typographical changes that may be needed when they do the final review.
I would second that.
Discussion. Scout.
I would move that we have that in another week or our next meetings. Some of us weren't there, and I don't have access to that.
Ms. Ryder.
I skimmed over the middle school plan, and I would have a comment that is similar to one that I made to Sam, although Sam and Mary, as I said, did a great job of putting, as much positivity into the handbook as they could, but I didn't see that in the middle school. I started reading it, it was like, ugh. It was very negative. I mean, at the very least, I would ask that they put these 3 statements, if not 2 of them, at the beginning, so that there is something positive in the handbook. I don't know if anybody else got that impression in looking at it. Also, the same thing about the bullying, that it was the same statement that they used for elementary school. As I said, where it came from. I think that's where it needs to be modified, but it was difficult to read. I just couldn't understand it. Those are my comments.
What's that presentation at the last meeting or the meeting before that?
I think it was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah,
It was
on
the
the
last one.
25th.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, okay. Ms. Stout has requested that you're not asking for another presentation from the middle school on the handbook, are you?
No, I'm not asking for that. It would give us time to set a policy meeting and correct the error, or maybe we don't even need a policy meeting, but to correct the policy as it's written so that it could go accurately in the different handbooks, as Karen's referring to, and I would have a chance to read it.
Mr. Duval?
We were all provided the handbook via email prior to our meeting on the 25th, so we all had access to it.
Scott?
I think a point of order where we had a motion and a second, and then she made a motion, and
I
there was no
understand.
second.
I'm treating her motion as a request to Mr. Duval to change his motion.
That's right.
Discussing whether he's interested in changing his motion. Any other comments on Sharon's suggestion? What's your reaction to her motion?
I really couldn't hear her, so I couldn't tell you.
Her request is that you amend your motion to actually withdraw your motion so that we have it on an agenda item for the next meeting as opposed to tonight.
I don't see, other than a couple of small changes that Karen has made that make sense. We've started school. The kids need to have the handbooks. The parents need to have the handbooks so they know how to direct their children. So the farther we put it off, the more room for error becomes.
Scott?
I believe also the handbooks are electronic, right? They're not printed and handed out to every student, so that would give us the opportunity to meet as a policy subcommittee to update, and then any updates in the policy, or in the handbooks, could be sent out to the families as they're updated on the website. So I would like to concur with Mr. Duval to say, let's go ahead and pass the handbook as is, and when we get our stuff together to be able to make our corrections, they can then go into the handbooks to make sure that all are corrected and the same.
Ms. Stout?
We have a problem every single year with the handbooks, and it's because we don't get them till late, so we can't, I mean, these handbooks are long to really review them and look at them. We're sometimes catching something a year or two later, like the definition for the bullying. I would request that we get these handbooks by May.
Yeah, this is not an entirely new handbook. This is a modification of the modification of the modification,
Right.
right? So, I mean, if we reviewed the handbook last year, all this really changed this year are the slight modifications from last year's approval.
But if we could have that done earlier, we could really look through it, because I kind of think that all of us aren't reading every single thing. We're reading the highlighted things, and so if something slipped through because it's been slipping through, then the bully prevention thing's been going on for several years, and it wasn't a highlighted thing, so I didn't look at it till now.
Ms. Scott?
Sharon has made, I'm sorry, Ms. Stout, has made a very good point at having the school handbooks, and that's actually on our calendar to do in June of next year.
Okay.
So that it's kind of move that process along. So as long as we stick to our calendar,
Okay,
we will
great.
have several months prior to school.
That's great.
Okay, so we have a motion which has been seconded to approve the Monomoy Regional Middle School Handbook. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No?
No.
That's two in opposition.
May I ask a question?
Certainly.
Would these changes be put in there that I asked for?
I don't, the motion was to approve it as
As is.
presented.
Okay. Thank you.
There's no reason, as it's pointed out, that there's no reason you can't further modify it if it's going to be online.
I'm sure Mr. Carpenter can make those suggestions to Mr. Wilson, before it gets finalized. But they're good suggestions.
Thank you.
I think the wording on bullying, Sharon emailed me, and we had a nice email exchange on that I think is one that could use some wordsmithing for clarity, and it's not that it's off in marks. It's the exact same language in the high school and Chatham Elementary and Harwich Elementary. It's, I think we can fine tune, and again, I think if there are friendly suggestions on what we should, put in for, that's, I think it's easy enough to do, although it does create some pagination issues with the table of contents, as Sam does.
Stout, and you have?
This is just a point of information. When I was talking to Mask today, they informed me that our minutes need to say who, if we're not all unanimous, needs to reflect who votes nay.
Okay. So the record should reflect that no was voted by Ms. Stout and Ms. Ryder, as you are. I don't see Mr. Birchfield, so we'll skip it to the number 3 action item for now, the strategic plan, which was an issue that was brought up at the last meeting and put over to today, which turned out to be a good thing. Ms. Richardson.
As a point of information, how do we, as a committee, know or have proof that one of these goals has met? For example, I'm looking at page 5, and it says, develop building-based themes. And then it says it starts in November 2016 and completed in 2017. How do we know that? Are we ever made aware that that has happened? Just a point of information.
This is a great question. Anybody have a direct answer to that question? The theory is that we would seek reports with regards to how our strategic plan is going from the people who are assigned to complete the plan.
I believe that's the continuation of the process.
All right. Well, I was looking at the one that was in my packet.
I don't have a page. I don't have a number, so you have to give me
She's got the.
I know, they're not numbered, I just counted up to 5.
She's got the colored version.
Generally speaking, each of them has a designated group of people who are responsible for, for leading the thing, leading the items. So I would hope that we would get reports from the people who are doing them.
Yeah, but how do we know more than hope? I want to know.
Members such as yourself, bring it up. Ms. Ryder.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. Do we put it on the agenda? If we have these dates here, maybe we could add that as we have a rough agenda for the year. Maybe we could add that, whichever are coming due, as an item to see if we can get a report on it. Or something like that. Then there's a formal process.
Sounds good to me. Mr. Russell.
I would agree with Karen. I think that probably the superintendent or one of the designees front office would take a look at the accomplishment date and the appropriate who will lead it. Contact those folks well in advance if they need to be prepared on an school committee night, and come with us with documentation, 1 or 2 pages, reflected on math focus at that day, or whatever the goal might be, for us to be able to hear and listen and ask questions about that particular action step or goal. So someone has to kind of monitor this as we go along.
Or maybe we would want to put them on our agenda for 3 months before the designated completion date, or something like that. I mean, if these are dates by which it's supposed to be, when they're supposed to be completed, some of them have dates and some of them don't.
Yeah, some of them are
Right, but
ongoing.
I'd be happy with the ones that had a date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Right. Fall is pretty big.
right, but if we have ongoing reviews, updates
Yeah.
from the superintendent and Dr. Blanchard, and,
Maybe we have to, God forgive me for saying this, but create a policy as to when we'll be seeking a report on these things.
You're only
Well-
saying that because you're not on the policy subcommittee.
That's right.
Right.
I'm just willing to give them more work to do. Which reminds me, who's want to volunteer to be our collaborative representative this year?
We're gonna change the subject.
Everybody who wants to take the job, don't stand up. Any other, it's a great question. We definitely need to get you better answers to that question. Thank you. Any other discussions, comments, questions regarding the strategic plan? Ms. Stout?
I would like, there's, I don't, my thing's not numbered, but it's, I can tell you how many pages from the back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pages from the back. The top one is develop core values for each building. It reflects the uniqueness of each school and connections to the district's mission statement. That's the page I'm talking about.
Read it to me one more time. I was counting to 8.
Okay, all right, so at the top, does it say
It's-
develop core values in the very comment?
It's under Strategic Initiative 4A.
Yes, that's right.
That's,
Okay.
1.5 pages in.
I'm with you.
all right.
We're
Okay.
with you.
All right, so I'd like to change the wording. It says, publish an elementary guidance curriculum pre-K that clarifies and ties together the various social emotional resources evaluated by the district. And then there's a similar one for the middle and the high school, not exactly the same wording. To, in there, say something about, in keeping with the guidelines on implementing social emotional learning, SEL, developed by Mass DESC. This is what the law's talking about for us to do for this area.
Mr. Carpenter, do you have any thoughts on that?
You know,
Any pressure on you?
I would look at it as it's implicit that what we're implementing is, is following the models that the DESE has.
Well, I'll be voting for it if we put that in.
Ms. Ryder?
I haven't done research in this particular area, but if Sharon is saying this is a law, I think it's probably important to reference the SEL guidelines from MASC or from DESE.
Anybody else? Mr. Russell?
As a suggestion, if we adopt Sharon's suggestion, we then probably could take it off the school committee goals.
We probably could.
So it shows up in a significant type of calendar to be reviewed in a year or 6 months, and it reduces a potential for one of the goals to become less a burden for us as a group of 8.
So you think it's a good idea? You agree with her?
Yes, I
Amending
agree
this-
with my suggestion.
Mr. Russ, Ms. Ryder?
I think it makes more sense to add it in here than have it as a school committee guideline, just because of what it is. And what our responsibilities are as a school committee, that it does make sense to amend this, the wording here, to add it in.
Okay. So you have made a motion to make the amendment. Would you read it again?
To develop and implement a social emotional curriculum. Well, you have it, it's right here on the goals. Instead of support the development, just say to develop. To develop. And so it wouldn't say at all levels because they have it broken down into 3. So it just,
Get added to that description or take the place of the description?
it could take the place because right here it's saying that they could publish whatever, where the teachers would make it up. And they may want to make things up, but they may just want to find something that's already, what the DESE does mostly is they recommend things that are already published, but if we have things that do just as well, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Is there a second to her motion?
Yes, second, sorry.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
One, Mr. Duval votes no. Anything, other comments, proposed amendments, clarifications to the strategic plan?
May I just ask for clarification? So the words in the fifth box, publish an elementary guidance curriculum pre-K-4 that clarifies and ties together the various social and emotional resources evaluated by the district is eliminated
Right.
entirely and
Right.
replaced with your wording.
Yes, but let me just read this wording where people can change it
Is
on.
it this wording, support the development and
No, no.
implementation?
That support would only be for a goal for us, but to develop and implement a social emotional curriculum lessons at all levels in keeping with the guidelines of implementing social emotional learning, SEL curricula developed by the Mass Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, DESE.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that would replace all three of those.
It would replace
Not
all
just
three.
not just the, I'm sorry, Mr. Wood. It would replace,
Elementary, middle, and high.
correct, because it's at all levels, not just, at least that's what I thought I was voting
It
for.
has been so amended.
Thank you.
Any other proposed amendments? Is there a motion to approve the Monomoy Regional Schools strategic plan
So moved.
Second?
As amended.
as amended? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a unanimous vote. Thank you, folks. Mr. Birchfield? Not yet? Not that yet. You ready?
I mean, I've got, it's sending me the formal one now, but I've got.
Okay,
We got
we
one.
got time. We have other things to do, alas. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's evaluation. I have previously sent out the summative report. Everyone has a copy of it. Everyone has a copy of all of the individual reports. At some point, we need to vote to approve the superintendent evaluation or not. Ms. Scott?
I would like to move to approve the superintendent evaluation as presented, or given to us. I guess it wasn't presented tonight.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any further discussion? Ms. Ryder? I can't.
That's funny. For next year, could we, well, will it be you? Yeah, if we do it in May, it would be,
Supposed to complete it by, oh no, that was a different one, June. What
yeah.
was the question?
Sorry, I'm thinking, could we add a couple of comments in that are representative of themes of all the school committee members from their evaluations? Could we just add that into this summative document for next year?
For next year?
For next year. It's too late for this year, I
Yeah.
think.
I think that we would discuss that at the time and
Okay.
make an appropriate decision at that point, I would suggest. Did
That's
we
all.
vote? I'm losing it. All those, any other
This is
further, any
discussion.
further comments? Any other further comments or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Another unanimous vote. Thank you. We also have a couple of action items taken over from our last meeting, in light of the fact that it appears we didn't have a quorum. So we need to rediscuss and reconsider some proposals that were made. They're listed as items 5, 6, and 7 on the action items. Mr. Carpenter, could you give us a brief description of the first one, of number 5, the description, name change of the district accountant?
So we had our bookkeeper retire earlier this summer and had repeatedly advertised for a bookkeeper and got candidates who did not really have accounting backgrounds. And after 2 rounds with applicants that didn't have the skill set that we were hoping to see, we re-advertised with the exact same job description, just titled it District Accountant, and got a couple applicants that had very strong skill sets in the areas that the role really requires. So the request is to just formally change what was bookkeeper to district accountant, because the role in a regional school district does involve accounting, and it's an important skill set that those that are in that role need to have.
If I remember correctly, the idea was that the description of the duties was not being changed, only the name. Is that
Correct.
Is that correct? Is there a motion?
I have a question.
Let's make the motion first and then discuss
Mr.
it.
Chairman, I move that we change the name of the bookkeeper position, job description, to be district accountant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Ms. Ryder.
I have a question. Did we already have a position called district accountant in the district?
We did not. We had a bookkeeper in the district.
So actually, technically, we are eliminating the job called bookkeeper, and we are creating a new job position called district accountant, which you did before bringing it to the school committee. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Job description did not change. Job description stayed the same. So it's
kind of a gray thing, you're right.
It's a semantic name change
Develop.
to draw in the proper candidate.
I don't disagree with the title, because it definitely makes a difference. I worked in the same field that you work in as well. I realize that bookkeeper and accountant, 2 different things. I'm not disagreeing with that part of it.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain on this one, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Ryder abstains. Motion passes. The next one is the authorization for the SEIU and MREA job description discussions.
So,
Mr. Carpenter.
so there are a series of different roles that we need to address as a district. I think at our last meeting, I talked about from the SEIU, which is our custodial union, there is a want to acknowledge that the night crew here at the high school oftentimes have events that they're having to help facilitate that may be more than what occurs in other buildings, and a person on the night crew seems to really become the go-to person for night events, and they're wanting to have us acknowledge that. So there's a want to have some sort of night leadership role, or night function management role. Concurrently, the district has a position that's in the MREA stipends that does exist. That's a theater manager, or the auditorium manager, that has a stipend, but the stipend, and I think the job description with that stipend is stipend's too small, job description too broad and vague, and we've had turnover thrice in the last year in that position, and each time it turns over, we need to bring consultants down to train the next person, and what we need is to have stability so that when Cinderella or other productions are happening in the auditorium, we've got somebody to support them. So there's a need for someone in the auditorium, and there's a union between between the MREA house manager position and potentially, you know, who is the go-to on the custodial crew. We posted for a stipended role to address the go-to person for the SEIU, and we're hoping that we could bridge these two needs and have one individual potentially service both of these. And in the posting, it said that ultimately this needs to be approved by the SEIU and needs to be approved by the school committee. What I shared at the last school committee meeting, it seems that from the SEIU's standpoint that there's not an interest in picking up the theater management, so we still need to resolve with the SEIU the roles of, you know, managing this building in the after hours, and how we best support the many community functions that happen here, while also needing to support the stage management. So I did meet yesterday with our representatives from the MREA to discuss the theater facility house manager stipended position that's in the contract, and suggested to them that we look at both the stipend amount and the job description that exists to find a way that it becomes a manageable job that will have sustainability, so that we're not going to see turnover in the role, but see stability, and not find the business manager and superintendent panicking in the middle of August trying to find someone to turn on lights and sound for a production of Cinderella. And that's really kind of where we are as a district. I think I had mentioned at our meeting that until we have this role resolved, we really can't rent our facility out to the community. So it's a high priority, need to address thing in order to have the facility able to rent to the community. There was also another job description that I talked about that was on the MREA side that we need to address as a group, and that is how we deal with our Channel 22 cable studio. So we have in the MRA contract a position that's called, I think it's AV/cable advisor. And it's a stipend that is sort of similar to what a big club would have, in terms of a stipend. But now that we have taken over and actually are running our own educational cable channel and need to go have somebody put the programming on themselves, it's a bigger role than what that initial stipend and job description were for. So part of the conversation with the MREA leadership yesterday was just acknowledging that I believe our committee needs to look at that and create something like a Channel 22 director or supervisor that's one stipend, and look at the AV/cable advisor as sort of a TV film club stipend that's commensurate with other academic type clubs that the school has. So as I said, there's many different things that we were kind of covering in these two areas that need to get addressed with some stipends that don't currently exist, not unlike the NEASC stipend that need to get resolved with our in this case, two different unions.
So if I understand, the goal is to have our approval for you to discuss these things with these two unions so that you get a preliminary understanding of what the job descriptions will be, so that it can be brought back to us for our
support.
Right, because
That
it needs to come,
essentially
it needs to, we need to negotiate it, and, the union takes it back to, ultimately takes it back to their group for approval, and that needs to come back to this group for approval as well.
Mr. Duval.
I move that we direct the superintendent to move forward with the custodial union and the MREA in negotiations and development of job descriptions and proposed stipend amounts for the AV club advisor and the theater facilities manager, and to come back to the committee for approval on these positions.
Is there a second? I second that. Go.
Okay, so it's not three things, it's two. One is the AV club advisor, and the theater is also the maintenance person?
I think it would be it's actually, I think, three, if I was to make a friendly amendment, if the superintendent can. It's the SEIU is the custodial piece is separate from the two MREA.
Is that,
There's a-
all right, is that part of your?
So I guess Cindy's right. There's four things. So it's the SEIU custodial, how we deal with the go-to person at night here. It's the theater house management for the auditorium. It is the AV club, sort of the academic part of what happens in this TV studio, and then it's management of the studio itself. So it's those four different components spanning two unions.
That's the amendment to your motion, Mr. Duval, acceptable amendment,
Yes.
and to the second? Yes, Mr. Russell. Ms. Stout now.
So there's two questions I have. One is, in our agenda, there's two things written here, and I just want to make sure we're voting something that says that we're doing something that we've mentioned in our agenda.
Right.
Because I'm not sure, I'm not clear on that.
This would
And
be
the
number
other-
6.
This is number 6.
It's just number 6?
Yeah.
And so the maintenance is that, oh, I say, we
Haven't gotten
didn't,
to that yet.
we didn't say what jobs they were, we just said the two unions. Okay, the other thing is, what kind of money are we talking about for these things?
So currently, we do not have a stipend for a evening go-to lead, however you want to phrase that, for the custodians. So it's currently nothing. Our lead custodians, so each building has a lead, they make a little over $10,000 more than, I think, a typical a regular custodian. So the leads make more money. So it's
It's around $10,000?
if it were to be a lead, and again, I don't necessarily think that's that's the conversation with the union. The stipend for the house manager, or what is the theater facility house manager, as listed in the contract, is a $3,000 stipend currently. And as I said, it seems to be not large enough, because I don't think it's a large enough stipend, and it has, I think its job description needs to get clarified. It needs to kind of get clarified so that we can have more stability there. The AV club stipend that's in the contract, I believe, is a $3,500 stipend. And there is no stipend for a Channel 22 advisor, although if you look at both Harwich and Chatham, they have staff that they hire with the Comcast money that would come in to have a cable person for Harwich and a cable person for Chatham to run Channel 18.
But what money are we talking about for that?
Well, that's That's the
Well,
negotiation.
Okay, so, but the hard thing is, I mean, if we don't have a range, we don't know, we're supposed to be in, part of our job is to prove things and watch out for money, and that's,
But see, I think that's, part of that is when we come back and bring it to an executive session to go discuss
okay.
the money piece, but
Now,
at the moment, this is just to,
okay,
This
I'll
is
start
All
very
right.
much related to collective bargaining that
Okay.
we're not supposed to have a
okay,
discussion
I
about
get it. So we will have a later time that we can approve or disapprove.
in an
In
appropriate
executive.
manner.
Okay, that's fine.
Ms. Ryder?
So we're talking about 4 new positions or 2 new positions?
I would say that they're all stipends, not positions. So it's an individual that's a custodian that we would look at as a stipend that we would be layering on. There's a current position or a current stipend for the theater facilities house manager, and it's looking at that stipend and job description. There's a stipend for the AV cable advisor, and it's looking at the stipend and what that job or what that role entails. And then there is a need for a stipend to have someone run Channel 22 for us. But I don't see that as a full-time job. It's not I think hiring an FTE. It's a stipended role. Ms. Ryder?
So these are 4 stipended positions. I'm reading from the minutes from last time that says, the superintendent working with the SEIU custodial union created a night custodian theater function manager position. That's just, I'm not going to read the rest of it, but just that part. I also noticed that you had advertised for that position. So I would just like to bring up that this is the 4th time that I happened to notice that you had created a job description and advertised the job description without speaking to the school committee first. I think that it would be good if you were to be following our policy that says that you bring the description to the school committee first. Even if it needs to be subject to negotiation with the union, that can still be worked in there and not violate the policy.
Well, what was posted specifically stated that it needed approval by this body and the union.
That's correct, but it's the position description is brought to the school committee, and if you're creating this position and creating the description and advertising for it, then you've already created the job description without approval.
And I would say there are times when you need to resolve things. In the summer, we had, I think, 1 meeting in August, and this was coming to a head quickly and needed to get some forward traction to have issues addressed for both the facilities needs and the district's needs.
So because of the time factor that you're saying here, because this was a rush job, you would just ignore that policy in certain circumstances? I'm not clear.
I don't see me as ignoring the policy at all.
Any further discussion? Ms. Stout?
In the school year, for the most part, we have meetings every 2 weeks, and maybe we should make sure we have meetings every 2 weeks. So
Yeah, we have what?
meetings every 2 weeks. We didn't in August, for instance, have a meeting every 2 weeks, and so I'm thinking that maybe it's important to have a meeting every 2 weeks, and then it won't be an issue.
That's a good idea.
In the summer?
In the summer, anytime, if it looks like we need them.
Any further discussion, Mr. Russell?
I think the operative word there, if we think we need them. I don't think there's an automatic that every 2 weeks during the summer we need to commit ourselves to it. So, if there's a motion on the floor,
We actually ended up having at least 2 forums as well, which ended up basically being as long, if not longer, than meetings,
You mean workshops?
workshops. Ms. Ryder?
I'm not against Sharon's suggestion, maybe that's a good idea if it will deter this happening in the future. But if not, I mean, it would make sense to contact the school committee and say there's a situation and we need to have a short meeting about this. I mean, could it not be that we add an extra meeting, even if it's a short one, just for this particular purpose?
All right, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Russell?
this initiative is so seldom that I believe the initiative of the superintendent takes precedent. And I think if there's anything that comes up serving this issue, then it could easily be clarified with a phone call to the chair at the time. Have the chair meet with the superintendent via phone or in person, listen to what has just come up over a period of days, and act on it. I don't really see any real purpose to cause 8 of us to come together to help or assist to generate a job description, which I trust the superintendent and his leadership team can do. So I wouldn't see the real need to have that, primarily because I have the confidence that it works out.
Mr. Duval?
To your point, Sharon, this could have been taken care of in August, in the summer, but we didn't have a quorum. So, you know, if people are on vacation or things happen and they don't show up to the meeting, it's not gonna get fixed. So adding extra meetings in the summer in case of doesn't make sense.
It's
Because
difficult, it was difficult.
we
for
all
us to
take
schedule.
vacation time, we all have family things to do, so.
We had a difficult time scheduling the workshops because of everybody's quite earned vacation schedules. Ms. Ryder?
I would say that considering there have been several instances of creating job descriptions and even eliminating a job description without school committee approval, that it certainly warrants keeping that responsibility with the school committee, especially considering that our powers are pretty limited as to what we have oversight for, and that directly impacts the budget.
Yeah, I'm not sure it would be within our existing policies to allow for the chair and the superintendent to make an emergency decision on a topic that's in the purview of the entire committee.
Right.
Any further discussion? There's a motion on the table which has been amended and seconded, which has also been amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
6 to 1. Ms. Ryder in opposition.
Of course.
A7, the Monomoy Regional High School Field Maintenance Intermunicipal Agreement. I don't know if that's in our,
It is.
was in our packet last time, I'm not sure.
It's here.
I found it.
So,
Mr. Carpenter?
no, it's in your packet, I'm just trying to find it in my papers, but I can't. The general gist of this is, I believe, before the last school committee meeting, so this is probably now a little over 2 weeks ago, the Harwich Selectmen approved this agreement between the town of Harwich and the Monomoy Regional School District that essentially has Cranberry Valley Golf Course caring for the front lawns and the grounds around the high school. Cranberry Valley actually has been caring for the front lawn and grounds around the high school as part of the construction project. During the construction project, it seemed that the fields weren't really progressing as we had hoped. We worked out an arrangement with the general contractor to have Cranberry Valley come in and really get the fields to the state that they're at, which are, they're in great shape out there. This codifies a relationship between the school district and the town of Harwich for this, to the tune of $38,000 for the labor side of the field maintenance and $44,000 for supplies and expenses, and is a agreement that goes for a three-year period of time and then would be reevaluated. But from our standpoint as a school district, Sean Hernandez and his team over at the golf course have just been doing a great job, and I'd strongly recommend approving this.
Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the intermunicipal agreement between the town of Harwich and the Monomoy Regional School District for field maintenance of the high school facility, with the annual expense for the budget of 2017 of $82,000.
Second it.
Further discussion? Ryder.
Question, on this second page with the budget, the stipend / superintendent 200, I don't understand what that is.
So Sean Hernandez is known as the superintendent of the golf course.
Okay.
Further discussion? Comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's a unanimous vote. Is Mr. Birchfield in the room? Ms. Izernial? The agenda item is the lease for the iMac computer lab for TV studio. Number 2 on the action item list.
Technology is a wonderful thing. The proposal that was in your packet was for the I-5, and that was a total of $41,121.90. So Jim has gone, and it's coming around, revised the quote through Apple Store for Education, and the price to increase to the I-7s would be $47,192.90. So it's approximately $6,000 higher. But it appears that with money well spent, we will be starting out with less obsolete equipment than the I-5s. And then that's divided by 3 years. So it would be approximately $15,600 a year, $15,600. So I wondered if we could just approve not to exceed this $47,000 that then we would get the financing for. Because we have to then, what I'm gonna have to do tomorrow is send this revised quote to the leasing company, and they'll revise the lease.
So you as our business manager support this proposal?
I do. We think that it's money well spent, and why not start the kids out with more current operating systems than what we were originally going to do.
Your recommendation would be not to exceed the amount on here, right?
Correct.
Including the $190.90.
That's correct.
Is there such a motion?
I would
Ms.
move
Scott.
to approve the Apple Store for Education Institution proposal that we were just presented with at a not to exceed amount of $47,192.90.
Second.
Okay, that's fine.
Any further discussion? Ms. Ryder.
I think this is a really good move to go to the I-7. I totally support this.
And this
Thank
is,
you, Jim.
And this is Mass State contract pricing that we get.
Can't repeat it.
And the Hewlett Packard, the leasing, that's a state contract as well.
Any further? Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's unanimous. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Russell.
Before adjournment, a question and clarification. Based on 2 weeks ago, a meeting that evidently we did not have the quorum, based on the understanding of the two towns agreement. Just so that those of us who were able to make it, I spent 3 hours here. If it were to occur again, do we have a process why those who cannot attend due to illness, vacations, whatever, contacts the superintendent or Barbara, you, so that if ever it occurred again, we could cancel a meeting before any of us who are available wouldn't have to wait here and go through a process.
I would say that I was contacted by all of the members who were not available prior to the meeting. So I take responsibility for that. We were informed in writing weeks before, I believe, by Ms. Richardson, which I completely forgot until we got here. And I received emails from both Ms. Stout and Ms. Ryder as to their own availability. So I take responsibility for that, on that.
Well, I guess it was just, it's well-meaning. None of us intended, and obviously, if the mindset was if there were a resignation and there was 7 on board the committee and 4 were here, one could logically imply that that's a quorum. Evidently, it's not based on some understanding of the document. I wasn't aware of that. So unfortunately, we can next time avoid it.
Yeah, and since you bring it up, you know, we are talking about, well, not only will it be a probable goal to review the regional agreement, but as I've said now a few times, we're required by the regional agreement. And the regional agreement could potentially be improved by being clearer on what it means with regard to a quorum. The regional agreement provides that there have to be 5 for a quorum. It doesn't say 5 out of 8 or 5 out of 7, it just says 5. But then it also says that there have to be 2 members from each town, which would imply that you can have 4. So at a minimum, it needs to be clarified, and I would respectfully suggest, and I think that's something we should talk about as part of our review. Both to deal with the fact that it's not clear as written, and also to perhaps amend it so that we can deal with that if it happens, if something similar happens. Any other conversations, discussion? Was there a motion to adjourn? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You know, another unanimous vote. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, our next workshop
Thank you
date to
all.
confirm,
I believe it's the 28th, am I right?
September
I didn't
6:30.
think I'd make it through this meeting.
You look rough.
System
Fortunately.
goal.
You would be okay to
Can't even read.